Hello, everybody. Welcome to After 83 Weeks. If you're like me and you sat down to listen to this week's episode with Eric and Conrad and thought, shoot, I forgot to send in my question and these are all so great, well, we are giving you another opportunity tonight with Eric Bischoff himself. So glad you all have joined us live. It's not just me here tonight. I got all my friends, George Hermosa, Adam Woods, and let's get the man of the hour where he belongs. There he is. How you doing, Eric?
I'm just doing great. Doing great.
Cool. Well, G. Herm and Adam Woods, good to have you back, by the way, G. Herm. How are you guys feeling?
It's great to be back, and I am privileged and honored to still be welcomed back, even though I'm not as occurring as I would like to be. I feel like I'm just maybe becoming a special guest more and more, but either way, thank you for being here, or thank you for having me here.
Always trying to make himself important, Eric. But we don't mind.
Who isn't?
That's right. Who isn't? We all are.
Yes.
And speaking of, I think Steve Kaufman would appreciate if we mentioned him a little bit. He will be back next week. He's actually doing something really cool and fun that we'll let him talk about next week. And he is with Kim Kardashian. And that's not a joke or a lie. He really is hanging out at a shoot with Kim Kardashian where she's talking about her work in the prison system. So he's learning something today, Eric. What do you think about that?
Well, that should be fun. And maybe Steve will end up being the next Mr. Kim Kardashian.
I haven't thought about that.
There have been worse.
He can move out here and pick up where Kanye left off.
I don't think he'd mind that one bit either. And we do love Steve's girlfriend, Shay, but I don't think she would mind Kim joining either. So, on that note.
That'd be a hell of a reality show, wouldn't it?
Right.
So you and Jason are coming back to produce reality shows? Is that what I'm hearing?
Kim Kardashian goes, what do they call it? Polyamory?
Well, yes.
Wow. Your knowledge on this subject is surprising, Eric.
It's amazing what you can learn on Pornhub.
Wow.
This is great. I love it. I love all of it.
I thought the term would be a throuple.
A throuple, yes. Mm-hmm. They would be a throuple. And we're teaching everybody things out there today. I think that they expected to learn things about pro wrestling, but I'm not sure. Well, we can ask them ourselves. Mick Mac is here, Iman Perry, Dustin, Albert, Walter, Ed, Dead. I know Nicholas was here early, and Mick Mac is on a 9-hour drive heading up to the football finals in Sydney. That's a different kind of football, everybody. And I would have just shown my foot there on camera, but I'd have to charge you all for that. So now that we have acknowledged all of our fabulous live viewers, let's get to some questions for the week. This week, Eric, you had an Ask Eric Anything episode. However, you mentioned that next week you are going to be covering the Luchadors. Have you guys recorded that one yet, or is Conrad still?
No, we haven't. Actually, before the show started, I'm here in my office. I was doing a little bit of research. But I'm going to be recording that episode tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. my time. So it'll be hot off the presses and available on ad pre-shows probably sometime early to mid-morning.
All right. So that means that Conrad is on his way back or is back from Mexico. Anything to report, Eric? It sounds like you are as curious as we all are about what he was doing there.
Well, I have a sense of why he went. And I did before he left, but I haven't talked to him since he's gotten back. We've shared 2 texts, one the night he got back, and one this morning, actually, when we locked up our time to record. So I'll find out a lot more tomorrow.
Okay, all right. G. Herm, Adam Woods.
As long as it's not Hong Kong, I think we're fine. Right?
Oh yeah, I'm not worried about it.
There we go.
You're gonna find my fat ass in Hong Kong anytime in the near future.
This is getting great. You know what? Actually, I'm going to start off in the days because Craig Smith asked, what did you think of the team of Dr. Death, Steve Williams, or Terry Bambam Gordy, better known as the Miracle Violence Connection? And, I mean, do you have any opinions of their time? Terry Gordy.
Where did that come from?
Terry Gordy.
What in the world has that got to do with anything that we're here to talk about, last week's show or Mexico?
Well, Craig Smith wanted to know.
Huh?
Craig Smith wanted to know, so I thought
How about a transition somewhere in the middle of all this? My
There he
God.
is.
that would be good. That would
All
be
right,
good.
let's try
Let
this
me
one more
let
time.
me help you out with my technical prowess here. Eric, we have a question from Craig Smith the second.
See, that allows me to shift from one gear mentally into another mental gear. I've only got 4, so I got to be careful how I shift them.
All right, so what did you think of Dr. Steve Death Williams and Terry Bam Bam Gordy when they were in WCW in 92? And who do you think would win a match between them and Hall and Nash? Little fantasy booking. Kick us off.
What did I think of them? You know, I did, obviously I was there, but they were there only for a brief period of time. And I don't think I ever worked with either one of them. When I say worked with, when they were there, I was a backup announcer, and I'm just not sure I ever did anything, had any mic time with either one of them. So what's my impression of them? They seem like both, you know, old school kind of, you know, 60s, 70s, probably tough as hell, you know, Texas wrestlers. I mean, they were tough. They were aggressive. They were not, you know, Nick Bockwinkel by any stretch of the imagination, but they were great at what they did, and they were tremendously over in their era. In WCW, you know, like I said, they weren't there long enough to make a really big impression. So, you know, I don't have much more to say about them than that. Much respect for them, certainly, especially coming up the time that they did. So, nothing but respect, but really don't have any firsthand experience or opinion.
All right, thanks for that one. Well, let's turn our conversation here to current WWE. Nicholas Julian wants to know, do you think the Triple H WWE can be as successful as the Attitude Era or anything close? This question just makes me excited that people think that we're back on our way to the Attitude Era with Triple H at the helm. So do you agree?
I mean, I don't know what the listener meant by Attitude Era. I mean, in terms of that level of popularity, the Attitude Era being late 90s, early 2000s, do I think wrestling can return to that? I think it can. I think it's possible. Let's put it that way. I think it's very possible, despite the musings of a bunch of people who may know a lot about wrestling inside the ring, but don't know their ass from a bag of fucking hair when it comes to the television business. I think it can, or I think it's possible. Will it? I don't know, man. Let's just hope. And it certainly appears, right, that it could. We're growing. WWE's been up about 20% or so consistently now since the transition. And the buzz keeps getting stronger because the product keeps getting better. So that's a good thing. Let's hope. AEW, you know, had a good night last night. So maybe we've kind of gotten over a wrestling hump. Who knows?
All right. Well, we're definitely not going to just let that one fall. There was a long period of time where we would ask you, Eric, what you thought of the latest Dynamite, and you hadn't tuned in. The last few weeks, it's been a different story. Is all the backstage stuff what's gotten you reinterested, or is it just because we harass you about what you think about it every week that you wanted to sit down and give us an opinion?
No, it's not that at all. It's because on Strictly Business a couple of weeks ago, Alba and I were discussing format and why format. You know, most people, especially people that aren't in the television business, and I don't expect layman civilians, those of you that have never tried to make a buck producing television, not really understand what a format means. A format is not just a television run sheet. A format is a formula. It's a formula, particularly in episodic television. It's a very specific formula that hopefully allows you to build your audience throughout your entire hour, or in this case, 2 hours. When I was in that business, before I became out of touch, according to Dave Meltzer, the goal was for your network, you know, they wanted to start prime time with one number and end it with a larger number. You wanted to grow your audience over that prime time period, right? And that's why they were very careful how they programmed certain shows, because they wanted to build up to, you know, the main event, so to speak, of their primetime schedule. And individual shows have to do the same thing. If you start your show and your lead-in gave you, for example, 1 million viewers, the goal, at least before I became Out of Touch, was for your show to build upon those numbers on a quarter-hour basis, so that you ended up with a bigger audience than you got. That was always our goal when formatting or scripting television. It's not just booking matches, right? There's a little more to it than that. So, I talked a lot about that on Strictly Business a couple of weeks ago, and then I said, well, let me give you an example. I will sit down and break down last week's Dynamite show, and I'm not going to talk about the quality of the matches and who cut a better promo, and nothing subjective. I just want to focus on the formula, or lack thereof, of that show. And as it turns out, that particular show lost about 40% of its opening number. So they opened up with a 1.2 and ended up with something a little over 800,000. You literally lost almost 400,000 viewers over the course of 2 hours. It's not the way it's supposed to work. So rather than me just babble on about it, I literally broke it down kind of segment by segment, and then suggested why or what could have been formatted differently to build that audience as opposed to losing 400,000. So as a result of going into that level of granularity, I decided I better watch the entire show and literally make notes on a minute-by-minute basis, which is what I did.
Now, how important are the players, the individual wrestlers that are involved in that segment, accredited to the formula? Is it a one-size-fits-all formula, or do the players matter much?
Well, of course the players matter. You're not going to put your top stars, for example, in the middle of your show. If your top stars are your top stars because presumably they have the most interesting story, that's debatable in today's environment, but let's just pretend, in the case of AEW at least, that's where your focus should be. Your focus should be on your top stars. And in fact, if you listen to Strictly Business, go back and listen to it. I talk a lot about that. I mean, I go into great detail, more detail than I can go into here because I'll bore a lot of audience. But you should listen to that because, to answer your question, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Talent matters. Positioning of the talent matters. The build-up outside of the actual match, leading to the match, and where that is placed so that you hook the audience and you get their attention and you build on that and create anticipation that theoretically at least holds the audience or grows it, right? Again, the idea traditionally, before I became Out of Touch, according to Meltzer, the idea in television is for a show to build its audience throughout the hour. And in order to do that, you have to be aware of how, or at least willing and aware to build your show in such a way that creates anticipation for the main event, because that's the last thing they're going to see. That's where you want your largest audience, traditionally, before I became Out of Touch. So that's what we talked about. And that's why I watched the show and paid close attention to it, as opposed to just kind of fast forwarding.
So how did they do? They opened with Moxley versus Bryan Danielson to see who was going to win to be in the finals for the championship.
Well, I didn't watch it last night. I didn't watch last night's show. I watched the weeks before. I did not get a chance to watch last night's show.
You are going so deep, Eric.
I will. I probably will, because I'm be curious to see. I was really harsh. Imagine that. I was very clear about what I saw that was wrong. And I said, even at the end of Strictly Business, I'll be interested in tuning in to what was last night's Dynamite to see if they made the exact same mistakes or if they've improved upon things. But if you're telling me that, who opened the show?
They opened with Jon Moxley versus Bryan Danielson.
And who was in the main event?
Chris Jericho versus Sammy Guevara for the other spot in the finals.
Okay, that was a great format. Then you opened up with your hottest act, or one of your hottest acts, and you close it with the other arguably hottest act.
You're right, George. I said that wrong. It was it was Moxley versus Sammy Guevara to open, and then Chris Jericho and
either way, that makes sense.
It was,
and again, I want to cut them a little slack. They got handed a bag of shit last Sunday night, right? And they had to sit down and rewrite everything and replan everything. So as critical as I was on that format, and I had every right to be, because it was stupid. And it could have been much, much better, even under the circumstances. But it sounds like last night they did a pretty good job of balancing the show. Because in the previous week, they had the most important match, which was Bryan Danielson and Hangman Adam Page in the middle of the fucking show. And then they had the Ring of Honor championship in the main event, and they never promoted the damn thing. Not one time through last Wednesday's episode did they do one thing other than a quick graphic, which nobody pays attention to. They didn't discuss it. We didn't hear an interview from anybody. There was no videos. There was no anything. And my question was, why in the world would you have arguably one of the better matches you could possibly have with arguably the biggest star in Bryan Danielson? Why would you have that in the middle of the show and have a match for a title nobody cares about with two people nobody's ever heard of and not even promote it? It's just mind-boggling to me. But anyway, I digress. Tune into Strictly Business.
Well, speaking of Dynamite last night, you didn't miss much. There was really nothing on about Dynamite that was anything worthy, except for one single thing, and that is the Acclaim, because they've arrived.
Oh,
but I do
boy.
have a question regarding the Acclaim. Yeah, there we go. How's that go? But I do have a question because, going back to the Scrum last week, obviously everybody talked about CM Punk, blah 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 blah. But there was also like another question that somebody that will remain nameless, I'll tell you guys after the show, asked the Acclaim, and I thought of it as being disrespectful. They were asking, not the Acclaim.
We already know who that's
Swerve
going
and Keith Lee, saying like, "Oh, should you have guys called an audible? Should you have guys, change the finish?" Like, I don't know. I kind of thought that question being a little disrespectful to say it in such a public way. But with that said, is there ever an instance of a match you think maybe midway, maybe calling an audible and changing the finish in some ways, or should it always be according to the plan?
I don't think there's an absolute in anything involving live television. You depending on the circumstances, you have to almost always be prepared to call an audible. Somebody gets hurt, match goes 7 minutes long. You're constantly calling audibles throughout an entire 2-hour episode in one way, shape, or form. Hopefully most of them are kind of minor. And I didn't see what you're referring to, so it's hard for me to visualize it or comment on it because I didn't see it. And I'm not quite sure I understand what you're referring to.
Well, the match at All Out between the Acclaimed and Swerve and Keith Lee, best match of the weekend or best match of the night for the most part. But a lot of people were saying like the crowd was just, they were aching and they want, like, it would have blew the roof off the place had the Acclaim would have won the titles, but that's not the finish that they went with. They went with
no, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't. No, look, here's, and this kind of ties into what I talked about on Strictly Business, is you have to prioritize. What's the most important thing? When you're producing television. Well, the most important thing is to have a successful television show, because in AEW's case, because they don't really have any other revenue streams per se, they do, but negligible. Your television is your entire heart and soul. That's all you got is TV. Because if you didn't have TV, you wouldn't have pay-per-view. So, boom, we're done. That's the end of the conversation. It's not even up for debate. Not with me anyway. So if I'm AEW or Tony Khan, I'm putting the quality of my show and my ability to grow my audience and satisfy my audience is my number one priority. What's my number two priority? The pay-per-view. And while you may have had a hot match that may have blown the roof off, so to speak, and maybe calling an audible and moving things around because it ended up being such a hot match, which is, by the way, great 2020 hindsight, if I am understanding the situation, right? But I don't think I would, since, I don't know, I wouldn't have done it. I would have stuck to my plan. You have to have a plan. That's the reason you have a format. It's the reason you have a formula. And I would have prioritized the show, and I think booking the show the way they did, writing the show the way they did, book ending it with two interesting matches that are going to have a very significant impact on the outcome of the pay-per-view and storylines going forward, that would be my priority. And I don't think I would have juggled things around to accommodate what was a really cool match to satisfy the audience for one night.
No, I agree, especially because they're going to have a rematch next week in Arthur Ashe Stadium. But if the Acclaim doesn't win that match, then we riot. So,
Oh, boy.
Well, give us something to talk about.
Well, something that I believe has changed since All Out as well that I noticed last night on Dynamite: no blood, no cursing. Yeah, it seemed like a little bit of a cleaned up version, Eric. Should we be surprised about that, considering all the bad press that's been circling them the last couple weeks?
More than a couple weeks.
Couple years?
Wasn't the AEW the show that had a guy cutting somebody's head open with a pizza cutter right before a Pizza Hut commercial?
Oh, yeah, Domino's. They love that.
Yeah, I mean, so it's not like this is something new. And how long have I been talking now? For quite some time about why I don't like blood and why I think blood is bad for business and why blood may satisfy a certain percentage of the audience. It alienates advertisers, which will alienate your television network and your television partner. So those are all the reasons why I've been against blood. And perhaps, who knows, maybe it was just an outlier. Last night's show was an outlier and somebody just forgot to swear and forgot to get juiced. I don't know. Let's see what happens next week. But I think if the pattern becomes that you're no longer seeing blood, except for perhaps on pay-per-view, and you're no longer hearing cursing, which we heard rumors about, right, a couple of weeks ago, and then we heard, no, it's all taken out of context. It's not really true. That rumor was floating around, so maybe now it's manifesting, and we'll see over the next couple of weeks if it's just, like I said, a one-off or if it's a pattern.
I think it was Renee saying, like, okay, John, you don't have to bleed in every match. We have a daughter, you know.
Maybe
we know she's watching.
Hey, fatherhood will change a man. You know what I mean? It'll soften you up.
Madden Sleep Podcast.
I'm sure at some point the daughter was like, why is daddy always bleeding?
Not only that, or dropping F-bombs, but you guys, I saw, not to go too off track, but I think it was on Instagram. Somebody said it. Maybe no, it was on Facebook because I follow my Facebook, and I keep my Facebook just to really close friends and family. I don't open it up for everybody, but I do follow like silly animal videos because that's how I chuckle in the morning when I'm having my coffee and sitting outside. I look at these silly ass animal videos, and one of them was this like little. He could have been 3 years old, cutest little girl. And her mom's videotaping is on her phone, right? And a little girl says, Mommy, and looks out the window. Look, a fucking goat. And the mother, you're the mother cracking. No, honey, that's the goat. No, it's a fucking goat. Because that little kid has been sitting around when the parents don't think it matters and nobody's listening, right? And seeing those messy ass goats, because goats are messy. We used to have a bunch of them, and they come up and they beat their heads on your windows because they want to come in and play, but they're messy. They shit all the time. They just never stop. There's goat shit everywhere when you have goats. Mrs. B and I had a bunch of them. We named each one of them after a Gilligan's Island character. We had Gilligan, Mary Jane, the captain.
And the skipper too?
No, we didn't have any skipper. We were working on skipper when we decided to get out of the goat business. But my point is that video was this cute little girl going, oh, they're fucking goats. So maybe Renee is thinking, I don't want our little kid to grow up, dropping F-bombs and cutting people open. So, hey, lighten up. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think so, but maybe.
Either way, that's going to be one cool kid.
Which is wild because, in generations previous in terms of the wrestling business, red equals green, right? The blood basically got more money, more house, right? So,
yes, back in the day before the wrestling business was driven by licensing revenue, that was back when you gave your television to a station, hoping that they would air it so you could make all your money selling tickets in the arena. And yes, that was true back in that day. But in this day, The entire industry is driven by one and one thing only, and that's television. And television doesn't like that gory shit, especially if you're targeting. And even though everybody talks about 18 to 49, there is a substantial teen and preteen audience. And you have to be sensitive to that. Even if it's not your core demo, you have to be aware of that, because your network is. One of the reasons why you never see a beer sponsor in wrestling, and even in, for example, WWE, where the median age of the viewer is probably 54, I'm guessing, maybe less, maybe 52, 50, who knows, whatever it is. It's certainly in the 50s. You can't sell beer there, because even though your core audience is well above the age of, legal drinking age, there's still a significant enough teen and preteen and children's audience on your show that liquor won't touch it. It's just one example. And blood kind of is in that same category. When you have excessive blood, yes, your core audience is older and they know what it is and whatever. They're not concerned. But when you've got a substantial audience that falls into that teen and preteen audience, your studio is going to be sensitive to that. So maybe that's what happened. Maybe somebody listened. 7 months I've been banging this fucking drum. Maybe somebody's opened up and listened.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get to some questions from our live audience. You know what? These super chats, we got to ask them. The Landlord Harassment Channel says, Eric, it is time for you to admit that SmackDown sucks without Roman. Also, did you ever consider taking yourself off camera during the NWO days? Let's just address that.
Yeah, I think I did, especially towards the end. Definitely towards the end. But
because you were over it, or because you believe the audience was? Both?
No, because I had so much other shit going on. I just, TV was like the easiest thing that I did all week. The rest of my week was a nightmare back in the office for a lot of reasons. So, yeah, I just had so much going on. I would have liked to have not been on camera for sure. And I did consider it a couple times.
And how would you feel if you were an executive over at Fox and the consensus was that SmackDown sucks in capitals with 10 U's without Roman Reigns? Would you be concerned?
Have their numbers deteriorated?
I don't believe they have. I think they had a little dip this last week, but yeah.
I don't think they have either. In fact, I think that even though they've had a couple preemptions in, a handful of markets, they've still delivered pretty significant numbers and been number one, not only in cable for the night, but cable and network. So I don't think anybody at Fox is sweating anything right now.
Now, if Sami Zayn's off the show,
that's different.
Now there's a question.
Bottom falls out. Boom. Wheels fall off. Bottom falls out. Brakes die. You're fucked.
People are wondering if that is maybe going to happen due to some cryptic social media posts by one Sammy Guevara himself. Do you think in this day and age, the bad press that someone like Sammy has suffered hurts them more than being a big draw helps them?
You got to bring me up to speed. First of all, I thought we were talking about Sami Zayn.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sami Zayn.
Weren't we
Sammy
just
Guevara.
Didn't somebody just say Sami Zayn from SmackDown? The bottom falls out.
I mentioned Sami Zayn because he's like the best thing about SmackDown right now with the bloodline storyline and Roman and everything. So yeah, we can talk about Sammy Guevara as well.
No. Charlene wants to know about Eric's thoughts on the Usos' newest family member, who is actually Sami Zayn.
I dig Sami Zayn.
Yeah.
He's fucking crazy. But he's cool crazy. He's fun crazy. And he's really, really talented. Have you ever heard me use a phrase, you can slow a fast horse down, but you can't speed a slow horse up?
Mm-hmm.
That's Sami Zayn. He is a fast mucker-fuzzing horse. He's fast. And if you're not used to being around somebody like him, it can make you a little uncomfortable. Like you want to leave the room because he just seems so nuts. But he's really smart and fun. I wish I would have gotten to work more with him.
My favorite Sami Zayn thing, what was it, like 3 weeks ago? him and Roman were in backstage together, and they're talking, they're doing their thing. Sami Zayn's doing a little jiggle, whatever, and then the camera like zooms out, and you see Jey Uso, like Mr. Tough Guy Jey Uso, like, I don't like you, Sami Zayn, literally trying to cover his face because you can tell he's just cracking up so bad. Like, I'm sure it's out there, but it's like the best TV you'll see. Like, just like, yeah, you can just tell that he's just the shining star of SmackDown right now.
It is. It's funny you say that, because I can visualize it. I didn't see the show, but that's an easy thing, especially knowing I don't know Sammy real well, but I mean, just working with him, I know him, but I can see him doing that. But isn't that like the fun of live TV?
Yeah.
That you see that, because it ain't supposed to happen. And that, and you can see that. And that's what makes live TV so much fun. And I'm glad nobody cut away from that.
Yeah.
Right. And just let it happen. That's what I've said this so many times. I'm sure I've said it on this show. WWE, I know you guys have heard me say this. My biggest bitch about WWE for a long time, before I started working there in 2019, and certainly after I left, is that it's too clean. It's too pretty. It's too perfect. You never see a mistake, and therefore it doesn't feel live to me. But when you see a little something like that, just a little wink and a nod to those of us who, watch it all the time, it just reminds you if you're watching live TV, and I think that's great.
Love that. Here is a great one from John Gorman, who's watching us live on Facebook. He said, "Hey, Eric, I have studied your approaches to business for a long time and have learned a ton. Thank you. My question is, if you could go back to 1995 to 98, would you keep going straight after WWE, or would you focus more on WCW? Thanks."
I appreciate that, John. Look, I went after WWE because I was focused on WCW.
Ooh, I like that.
I mean, I know, and John, please don't misunderstand me. I appreciate the question. I appreciate you being here, but it's part of like the underlying narrative. The current is, if Eric would have been more focused on WCW instead of, trying to take out WWE, WCW would still be around. I've heard that kind of thing for 20 years now. And what people fail to recognize is that I made WCW number one by focusing on WWE and by focusing on outperforming WWE. That's why I changed the live action format for wrestling. That's why I did all the crazy stuff I did. That's why I brought in the luchadors and created a cruiserweight division. All of those things were because I was focused on going after WWE. WCW would have been what it had always been if I would have done what everybody always did, which is not focus on trying to become number one. I wanted to be number one. Who was number one? WWE. So guess what? Here I come. Hi, my name is Eric Bischoff. I'm going to kick your ass. Strap in. 83 weeks. It's going to fucking hurt, but you'll come out better for it. Boy, did they ever.
Done and done. Well, so do you think there's some advice for AEW kind of enveloped in there a little bit about how much of an eye to keep on WWE?
No, because it's two different scenarios.
Mhm.
AEW is not going after WWE. They're just in the same business. If
they think they are.
Well, that's because they're delusional. But they want you to be delusional. Because it's like if you keep saying it, eventually people will believe it, right? Just keep repeating the same nonsense over and over and over again, and people will eventually believe it. I'm not going to tell you who you could attribute that theory to, because that would be controversial, and I'm not going to do it. But it's true. And I just heard the reference on a news panel discussion just a little while ago. That's why it's at the top of my mind. Two different scenarios, man. I went head to head. And by the way, not because I chose to, but because Ted Turner wanted to. I just was the instrument. I was the tip of the spear, but it was Ted's decision to go head to head. It was my choice, knowing I didn't have one, to not be number two. I want to be number one. That's why WCW became number one, by going after number one. Hope that answered the question without being too much of a dick.
I think you're good.
All right.
So we just surpassed the 20-year anniversary of, in my opinion, one of the top 5 segments in pro wrestling of all time. And I've said it once and I'll say it over and over again. That Billy and Chuck wedding is like top television ever. So
I agree with you.
It's more of a plea. If anybody hits you up for like a 20-year retrospective, can you just call me to be on it? Because I promise you, there is nobody that's going to put it more over than myself.
Personal plea here from one George.
No, I dig that. I dig that. And you know what I'd really like to do, and I don't think it's possible, but maybe at some point I'll ask for a favor, and I'll get Brian Gewirtz to join us, and maybe we can do something, a special, and you can be a part of that, Jorge, because it was your idea to do it. I'll see if I can get Brian to do it, because it's really Brian's the guy behind it. You know, I just was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to be in it.
But I mean, but the execution too. Like, don't undersell the execution of it.
Well, yes, thank you very much, and I acknowledge. I think I did a good job. I worked hard at it, but it was set up so perfectly. I mean, not that anybody could have done it as well as I did, because I really did want to do a good job with that, and wasn't afraid to make an ass of myself in the process, if that's the way it turned out. But that I admire Brian Gewirtz so much, and whoever worked with him, I don't even know, to be honest with you. I don't know who else worked on that, but it was so well thought out and planned and executed. I mean, even the mask. I mean, I had to fly out to LA a month before we shot that to get fitted for the mask, and that took like 4 hours in a chair in LA, and then I had to sit in a chair for 4 hours in Minneapolis a couple of weeks later to have all that makeup applied. They had to fly out a crew of makeup artists from LA to apply it all. You know, that was a big commitment, and that's why the execution. One of the reasons why the execution was so great is because there was no flaws in it. You know, when they took tight shots of me, the old man, me, you know, with the mask on, you couldn't tell, right? If that would have been some, you know, low budget, typical WCW, early WCW, or TNA or AEW, you know, they wouldn't have invested the time and the money to make it, because that had to be, I don't know how much that cost. I'd like to ask Brian. I'm guessing just the makeup alone was $75,000.
Holy crap!
Just the prosthetic, and then you're flying. There was like 3 or 4 makeup artists that came with it. There was a guy that just did the mask, and then there was like 2 girls that did the makeup, and then there was a girl that did the hair. I mean, fucking crazy. They flew them all out from LA and put them up in Minneapolis for at least a night. So you got 4 plane tickets, all that makeup, the prep. If that wasn't $75,000, man, I'll eat my desk.
Wow.
And
with that
worth
said, though,
every penny.
With that said, did your kids watch it, and did they know that was you?
You know, I don't know. My kids were, you know, teenagers and kind of doing their own thing by that time. So they'd grown up seeing me on TV. It was like no big deal. That's just what happens on Monday nights. So I don't know if they watched it or not, to be honest with you.
So keep George updated on any reunions there. Blue Metal 04 is hoping for a Nitro reunion. He said we're approaching 30 years since it first aired.
3 years away.
Yeah, I saw somebody did an event at the Mall of America.
Yes.
I think it was last weekend. And I'm not sure, and I apologize for not being certain. I think whoever was promoting that reached out to me and asked me if I could make an appearance. But I knew that my kids were going to be visiting that week, so I wasn't able to. I might have done it. I might have just for the sheer fun of it, done it. But I couldn't because my kids were here. Maybe we'll do some. Maybe I'll talk to Conrad. We've bounced that idea around a couple of times by having some kind of like an 83 weeks live show, you know, and a panel discussion and whatever, and doing that in Minneapolis kind of to celebrate the launch of Nitro. Maybe we'll do that next year. Who knows?
Awesome. Well, we will keep you all posted on that for sure. And we got so many good ones here, guys. Let's go to this one from Nicholas Blake. When you were doing live, Nitro Live every week, did you ever run into issues like talent not going by script, etc.? You asked another question where you wanted to know how you would handle that. That never really happened to you, did it?
Oh, sure. Because again, we didn't, we were very loosely scripted. So it wasn't like WWE, where you get your dialogue, right? You get your promo, whatever it is, and you get somebody sitting in a gorilla making sure you say every word the way it was written. It wasn't like that. Yeah. It was, here's the 3 or 4 bullet points we need. Here's where we're going. We need to end it with some heat, whatever. Go do it. It was very loosely scripted. And there were times when, guys didn't deliver what we were hoping they were going to deliver. There were times when occasionally guys would go into business a little bit for themselves, not completely, not change the direction of a story or anything like that, but sometimes take liberties. That happened occasionally, but you treated each one of them individually, depending on the severity or whatever. Sometimes they made it better, by the way, by going off script. Some of the best stuff we've ever done was probably off script to a degree. So it was never a big issue, but of course it happened because of the nature of the way we produced.
Love that. And Brian V from WSE Lounge just wants to tell you it was great having you on the show a few years ago. And he says, hello.
Hello, Brian.
That's what we do. We connect you to Hall of Famer right here, right now. And take it away,
real
boys.
Time.
While I go through these awesome questions from our live viewers. Oh, wait, here's a great one. Supreme Mash wanted to say, yo, Eazy-E, I think you are highly misunderstood and the true opportunist. What a compliment there. Do you feel misunderstood, Eric?
I don't really give a fuck, but opportunist? I don't know that that's a compliment. Is it? Isn't kind of an opportunist a little bit of a pejorative?
I mean, I would say it worked out for you, but
But if you're,
Supreme Mash is saying it with love, but I think,
yeah. I mean, look, I've seized opportunity when I've been given it. I've seized it and made the most of it, but I'm not sure that's the same thing as an opportunist. So
try again, Supreme Mash.
I'm going to plead ignorance to how it was used in that sentence and just say I'm not sure if I am or not. I'll have to Google it.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask you about, on a little bit more of a negative note that's been going down this week in the world of wrestling, EC3 and Velveteen Dream have been going back and forth about something that went down at a party, totally outside the ring and, away from everyone and everything that is wrestling a few years ago. Have you noticed any of these headlines? It's very clickbaity.
Yes. And I got up early. Actually, I got up about 3:00 in the morning. I went to bed early last night. I was feeling good. And I thought, okay, I got some traveling to do this weekend. I thought I'm going to go to bed early. And I went to bed like at 8:00, which is great. But I woke up at 3, wide awake. I was like, okay, well, I feel awesome. It's 3:00 in the morning. I'm the only one in Wyoming that's up, that's not working at a 7-Eleven somewhere in Cheyenne or Laramie. Now what do I do? So I go to my phone, of course, while I'm watching American Pickers, which is my go-to late night when I can't sleep TV viewing. And while American Pickers is picking through the barn, I'm looking through my phone and I see the headline in the story. And I put the phone down. I thought, I got to go take a shower. I felt grungy and dirty and stupid just reading that story or seeing the headline. I read about a paragraph in and I went on these people. Stupid. I don't want to read about that stupid juvenile shit. Don't you think it's weird?
It is super weird. And no matter what you think of it or no matter what happened, there's no way that putting that out in public can bode well for either one of them.
No, they just on both of y'all.
Controversy doesn't maybe always create cash, like 99.9% of the time.
Not when you're. No, let's quit talking about it. I'm feeling creepier by the second.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think Mick Mac can help. He never says anything creepy. He wants to know who you'd rather be stuck in an elevator with for 6 whole hours, Russo or Meltzer. This is a super chat. Thank you, Mick Mac.
Probably Meltzer, because I ended up killing Russo after listening to that voice for 6 hours, and he doesn't deserve to die, and I'd feel bad about it. So I'd rather tolerate Meltzer than kill Russo.
Nice.
Do you get the logic there?
Yeah.
Makes sense to me. Makes sense to me. We are going to go over to our special after party here in just a few moments.
Bro, hit the image, bro. Oh my God, 6 hours of that. Can you imagine? 6 hours in a fucking elevator with that? PTSD. Oh. Let's get out of here.
Well, thank you all. Solid answer, bro. Walt Bad says, thank you all so much for your awesome questions. We have more from our ad-free show, folks. We're going to save those for our special after party. Go and sign up at adfreeshows.com to spend a little more time with us here at the end of the show. If you've joined us on the 83 Weeks channel, thank you so much. Make sure that you hit that big old red subscribe button and the little bell. That way you will get a notification every time we go live with Eric and you can pick his brain. On that note, we will see you next week talking luchadors. Ad-free show friends, stay tuned. And everybody, I'm hitting the buttons. So bear with me here. Let's see how this goes. Have a great week.
Let's see how this goes.
Let's try that music.
Oh, do you have preloaded? Yep. Yes. What's the title on that? Satanic Sock Hop or something? It's weird.
All right, I am seeing why it takes Steve so long to do this. All right,